All right, welcome back. So, I had a great day today. So, I'm gonna top it off with another video here. We're gonna read Leopold Aschenbrenner's website that he made about called Situational Awareness, where he's gonna prepare people for what the next 10 years might look like through the lens of AI progress, and not just speculation. AI progress based on the progress that has occurred so far. So GPT-2 release date 2019. So it's been 5 years. And in that time, we went from GPT-2, which couldn't even do coherent sentences, to an invaluable tool and conversational partner that I used in my last video to help me set up my home lab, and now it didn't do that great of a job. Always go to the official docs if you're doing anything with technology, please. But I used it this morning to have a conversation. I use it to create ICS calendar files. Last week I had a really productive week, got all sorts of things done because I had conversations with ChatGPT, and at the end of the conversation we created calendar files to remind me to enact some of the things we discussed. So I got my car maintenance done. I went to the doctor. I figured out a medical program I want to be involved in, and figured out how to create an appointment there. Yeah, it's just really good, and it went from that. It went from just being a a subject of interest to PhD researchers, and those PhD researchers getting it to do the most compelling thing they could get it to do was to make something sound kind of okay. It went from that to this, to ChatGPT, in 5 years. So what's the next 5 years going to look like if this rate of progress continues? And that's what the author has been outlining in this document. So we're on the third section here. This is the challenges of this growing technology. So one of them was you need to build the technology, so you're going to run into some limits with it's all based on data centers. It's based on data centers. So this first section was about that. Then security is going to be a major challenge. Super alignment. So now we're reading about the next major challenge, which will be who gets to it first. Who gets control of the super intelligence? Who does it act on their behalf? And the author makes the case that the free world must prevail. And I'll do a sound check. Superintelligence will give a decisive economic and military advantage. China isn't at all out of the game yet. In the race to AGI, the free world's very survival will be at stake. Can we maintain our preeminence over the authoritarian powers? And will we manage to avoid self-destruction along the way? So now we have a quote from Winston Churchill. The story of the human race is war. Except for brief and precarious interludes, there has never been peace in the world. And before history began, murderous strife was universal and unending. Might not a bomb no bigger than an orange be found to possess a secret power to destroy a whole block of buildings, nigh to concentrate the force of 1,000 tons of cordite, and blast a township at a stroke? So this is from, I think, a book. Shall we all commit suicide? So really well read, brilliant author, Columbia valedictorian. Superintelligence will be the most powerful technology and most powerful weapon mankind has ever developed. It will give a decisive military advantage, perhaps comparable only with nuclear weapons. Authoritarians could use superintelligence for world conquest and enforce total control internally. Rogue states could use it to threaten annihilation, and though many count them out, once the CCC, Chinese Communist Party, wakes up to AGI, artificial general intelligence, it has a clear path to being competitive, at least until and unless we dramatically improve United States artificial intelligence lab security. And the author made the case in the last sections that we got a long ways for that. The security at AI labs right now is like a startup where they're actually choosing to make sacrifices in security and not really taking it seriously. Every month of lead will matter for safety too. We face the greatest risks if we are locked in a tight race. Democratic allies and authoritarian competitors each racing through the already precarious intelligence explosion at breakneck pace, forced to throw any caution by the wayside, fearing the other getting superintelligence first. Only if we preserve a healthy lead of democratic allies will we have the margin of error for navigating the extraordinarily volatile and dangerous period around the emergence of superintelligence. And only American leadership is a realistic path to developing a non-proliferation regime to avoid the risks and self-destruction superintelligence will unfold. Our generation too easily takes for granted that we live in peace and freedom. And those who herald the age of AGI in SF, San Francisco, too often ignore the elephant in the room. Superintelligence is a matter of national security, and the United States must win. Whoever leads on superintelligence will have a decisive military advantage. Superintelligence is not just any other technology. Hypersonic missiles, stealth, and so on. Where U.S. and liberal democracies' leadership is highly desirable, but not strictly necessary. The military balance of power can be kept if the U.S. falls behind on one or a couple such technologies. These technologies matter a great deal, but can be outweighed by advantages in other areas. The advent of superintelligence will put us in a situation unseen since the advent of the atomic era. Those who have it will wield complete dominance over those who don't. And even on a micro level, honestly, like, you know, I got a lot of stuff done last week, and I got it done because of the conversations I had with the AI. There's people who get things done, always make the right moves, like this author. And then there's the people who don't, I might fall into that camp. I'm not a Columbia grad, certainly not the valedictorian. So it can level the playing field. If the author and I both follow have access to the same super intelligent entity, and we both follow its instructions, we'll kind of be more on even territory. And if the author just neglects AI, I will win. I've previously discussed the vast power of superintelligence. It'll mean having billions of automated scientists and engineers and technicians, each much smarter than the smartest human scientists, furiously inventing new technologies day and night. The acceleration in scientific and technological development will be extraordinary. As superintelligence is applied to research and development in military technology, we could quickly go through decades of military technological progress. The Gulf War, or what a few decades worth of technological lead implies for military power. The Gulf War provides a helpful illustration for how a 20 to 30-year lead in military technology can be decisive. At the time, Iraq commanded the fourth largest army in the world. In terms of numbers, troops, tank, artillery, the U.S. led coalition barely matched or was outmatched by the Iraqis. All the while, Iraqis had ample time to entrench their defenses, a situation that would normally require a 3-to-1 or 5-to-1 advantage in military manpower to dislocate. But the U.S.-led coalition obliterated the Iraqi army in a merely 100-hour ground war. Coalition dead numbered a mere 292 compared to the 25 to 50,000 Iraqi dead and hundreds of thousands of others wounded or captured. The coalition lost a mere 31 tanks compared to the destruction of over 3,000 Iraqi tanks. The difference in technology wasn't godlike or unfathomable, but it was utterly and completely decisive. Guided and smart munitions, early versions of stealth, better sensors, better tank scopes to see farther in the night and in dust storms, better fighter jets, an advantage in reconnaissance, and so on. For a more recent example, recall Iran launching a massive attack of 300 missiles at Israel, 99% of which were intercepted by the superior Israel, U.S., and allied missile defense. A lead of a year or two or three on superintelligence could mean as utterly decisive a military advantage as the U.S. Coalition had against Iraq in the Gulf War. And I would even say, a lead of a month or two could do that too, if it's just a little bit smarter. Or if you have one extra feature. I mean, and it's the unhobbling too. Like, the difference between being able to plug a screenshot into ChatGPT and not is, has nothing to do with the AI capability. So it's like even small features can make a big difference. A complete reshaping of the military balance of power will be on the line. Imagine if we had gone through the military technological developments of the 20th century in less than a decade. We'd have gone from horses and rifles and trenches to modern tank armies in a couple of years, to armadas of supersonic fighter planes and nuclear weapons and ICBMs in a couple of years. After that, to stealth and precision that can knock out an enemy before they even know you're there, another couple of years after that. And then those entities would be fighting with one another, who would win. That is the situation we will face with the advent of superintelligence. The military technological advances of a century compressed to less than a decade. We'll see superhuman hacking that can cripple much of an adversary's military force, robo-armies, and autonomous drone swarms. But more importantly, completely new paradigms we can't yet begin to imagine, and the inventions of new weapons of mass destruction with thousand-fold increases in destructive power, and new WMD defenses too, like impenetrable missile defense that rapidly and repeatedly upend deterrence equilibria. And it wouldn't just be technological progress. As we solve robotics, labor will become fully automated, enabling a broader industrial and economic explosion too. It is plausible growth rates could go into the tens of percent a year. Within, at most, a decade, the GDP, so the gross domestic product, of those with the lead would trounce those behind. Rapidly multiplying robot factories would mean not only a drastic technological edge, but also production capacity to dominate in pure material. And I think there's a misspelling there. Oh, I guess material is like military materials. Okay, no. Think of millions of missile interceptors, billions of drones, and so on. Of course, we don't know the limits of science and the many frictions that could slow things down. But no godlike advances are necessary for a decisive military advantage, and a billion superintelligent scientists will be able to do a lot. It seems clear that within a matter of years, pre-superintelligence militaries would become hopelessly outclassed. The military advantage would be decisive even against nuclear deterrence. To be even clearer, it seems likely the advantage conferred by superintelligence would be decisive enough even to preemptively take out an adversary's nuclear deterrent. Improved sensor networks and analysis could locate even the quietest current nuclear submarines, similarly for mobile missile launchers. Millions or billions of mouse-sized autonomous drones with advances in stealth could infiltrate behind enemy lines and then surreptitiously locate, sabotage, and decapitate the adversary's nuclear forces. Improved sensors, targeting, and so on could dramatically improve missile defense, similar to, say, the Iran versus Israel example above. Moreover, if there is an industrial explosion, robot factories could churn out thousands of interceptors for each opposing missile. And all of this is even without considering completely new scientific and technological paradigms. For example, remotely deactivating all the nukes. It would be no contest, and not just no contest in the nuclear sense of we could mutually destroy each other, but no contest in terms of being able to obliterate the military power of a rival without taking significant casualties. A couple years of lead on superintelligence would mean complete dominance. If there is a rapid intelligence explosion, it's plausible a lead of mere months could be decisive. Months could mean the difference between roughly human-level AI systems and substantially superhuman AI systems. Perhaps possessing those initial superintelligences alone, even before being broadly deployed, would be enough for a decisive advantage. For example, via superhuman hacking abilities that could shut down pre-superintelligence militaries, more limited drone swarms that threaten instant death for every opposing leader, official, and their families, and advanced bioweapons developed with AlphaFold style simulation that could target specific ethnic groups. For example, anyone but Han Chinese, or simply withholding the cure from the adversary. All right, so China can be competitive. Many seem complacent about China and AGI. The chip export controls have neutered them, and the leading AI labs are in the US and the UK, so we don't have much to worry about, right? Chinese LLMs, large language models, are fine. They are definitely capable of training large models, but they are at best comparable to a second tier of U.S. labs. Although there is one I think coming out of China like that produces movies. I think that's like doing like turning a lot of heads. I think. So for example, E large seems to be a GPT-4 class model on LM-SYS, but that's over a year after OpenAI released GPT-4. And even Chinese models are often mere ripoffs of human open source releases. For example, the Yi 34B architecture seems to have essentially the Llama 2 architecture with merely a few lines of code changed. Chinese deep learning used to be more important than it is today. For example, Baidu published one of the first modern scaling law papers. While China pushes more papers in AI than the US, they don't seem to have driven any of the key breakthroughs in recent years. Similarly, Quen Hugging Face code cites mistrial a lot, and it seems that Chinese LLM dependence on American open source is an explicit worry that has made its way to the Chinese premier. Yeah. So that's all merely a prelude, however. If and when the CCP wakes up to AGI, we should expect extraordinary efforts on the part of the CCP to compete. And I think there's a pretty clear path for China to be in the game, outbuild the US, and steal the algorithms. And here's the path here. Number one, compute. And 1A, chips. China now seems to have demonstrated the ability to manufacture 7 nanometer chips. While going beyond 7 nanometer will be difficult, requiring EUV, and I'm not sure what that is. It's chip manufacturing technology. 7 nanometers is enough. For reference, 7 nanometers is what NVIDIA A100s used. The indigenous Huawei Ascend 910B, based on the SMIC 7 nanometer platform, seems to only be around 2 to 3 times worse on performance per cost than an equivalent NVIDIA chip would be. The Huawei Ascend 910B seems to cost around 120,000 yen per card, or about $17,000. So that's pretty good. We saw what the price of those other ones were. They were like $30,000. This is produced on the SMIC 7nm node, while performing similarly to an A100. That's pretty good. H100s are maybe 3 times better than A100s, while costing somewhat more. Yeah, so the prices we saw were probably a little bit high. We saw more like 30,000, suggesting that only a around 2 to 3 time cost difference for equivalent AI GPU performance for China right now. All right, and then so the yield of SMICs, which I think is kind of the Chinese NVIDIA, 7 nanometer production, and the general maturity of Chinese abilities here is debated. For example, they're still using Western HBM memory, which for some reason is not export controlled, though CXMT is said to be sampling HBM next year. And a critical open question is, in what quantities could they produce these 7 nanometer chips? Um, though, since they can still import other types of chips from the West, they could simply direct the entirety of their 7 nanometer node to AI chips, making up for lower overall production. All right, that's 103. Still, there seems like there's at least a very reasonable chance they'll be able to do this at large scale in a few years. Most of the gains in AI chips have come from improved chip design, adapting them for AI use cases, and China likely already steals NVIDIA chip designs from the Taiwan supply chain. Um, uh, so notably, even cyber criminals were able to hack NVIDIA and get key GPU design secrets. Moreover, TPU v6 designs were apparently among what was stolen by the recently indicted Chinese national at Google. 7 nanometer versus 3 nanometer or 2 or NM. I'm not sure if that stands for nanometer actually. And their general, I think it does, and their general fab immaturity probably makes things more expensive for China. For example, maybe these are 2 times worse on performance per cost or performance per watt. In turn, that also means to achieve the same overall data center performance, you need more power and need more chips networked together, which also makes things more of a hassle. But that seems by no means fatal. You can make very good AI chips on top of a 7nm process. I wouldn't have high confidence at this point, for example, that they couldn't just spend a bit more and get ample compute for the 100 billion plus and $1 trillion training clusters in a few years. Note that even 3 times more on chips would be much less than that in terms of increase in data center costs. Actual logic fab costs are less than 5% of NVIDIA GPU cost, and even considering memory and COWOS, which I forget what that stands for, it's less, I think it's like cost of watt of something, I don't know. It's less than 20% of the NVIDIA price tag due to their margin. And even GPUs themselves tend to be only 50 to 60% of the cost of a data center. So 3 times more expensive on the chip fab and might translate into much, much less than a 3 times increase in overall cost. Even for 10 times more expensive chips, it seems like China could stomach that without hugely increasing data center costs. Okay, and then 1B. Yeah, so there's still a lot to go in this. I'm obviously struggling to speak here. It's just not kind of my night for reading a lot. So let's see what we're at right now. So we're almost at a half an hour. That's a fine length. So I think I'm gonna get let's get through this page and then finish up the video. So 1B, outbuilding the US. The binding constraint on the largest training clusters won't be chips, but industrial mobilization. Perhaps most of all the 100 gigawatt of power for the $1 trillion cluster. But if there's one thing China can do better than the US, it's building stuff. In the last decade, China has roughly built as much new electricity capacity as the entire US capacity, while US capacity has remained basically flat. In the US, these things get stuck in environmental review, permitting, and regulation for a decade first. It thus seems quite plausible that China will be able to simply outbuild the US on the largest training clusters. So figure 37. The AI power build-out for 2030 seems much more doable for China than for the US, based on earlier estimates from 3A racing to the $1 trillion cluster. Yeah, so the U.S. could do it, but as the author said, it would mean not having any regulations, especially concerning the environment, and basically harvesting as much of our natural gas resources as possible, which I think is related to fracking. So, um, and the author actually argues to go ahead and do that because super intelligence is so important. And it can help you solve other problems. So, if you're potentially making other problems to get to super intelligence, the author thinks that's a fair trade-off, I guess. I don't know what's going on here. Anyway, so what's going on is this table. So we have American and Chinese power generation, annual electricity generation. So that's going up, and we can see for China, we can see that that's really rapidly going up, and we can see that the demand, the total AI demand of the largest training cluster, China is way more than suited for. So the United States is barely able to keep up with that. China is way ahead in that regard. So, and number two, algorithms, as discussed extensively in counting the OOMs, scaling compute is only part of the story. Algorithmic advances probably contribute at least half of the AI progress. I have to turn the light on. I'm getting scared. I'm hearing weird noises and I'm in the dark, so I will fix that by turning on the light. Okay, so the weird noises are like some feedback in my headphones. But anyways, as discussed extensively in counting the OOMs, scaling compute is only part of the story. Algorithmic advances probably contribute at least half of AI progress. We're developing the key algorithmic breakthroughs for AGI right now, essentially the EUV of algorithms because of the data wall. All right, so that's got to be it. It's just a late night video, so half an hour is a good length for that. So I'll advance the bookmark. And thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.